Hello, my name is Nauman Javed, and I'm a postdoc researcher at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Fernand Gobe is my supervisor, and we are working on a very exciting project called GEMS. Before proceeding to the actual presentation, let me briefly introduce GEMS. GEMS is a multidisciplinary project involving people from the field of psychology, neuroscience, computer science, and since the project is hosted by the Center of Philosophy of Natural and Social Sciences, there is a philosophical angle to it. The idea of GEMS is to semi-automatically generate the models of science from experimental data. This is not a new idea. In fact, the idea was originated back in the earliest days of AI by the great Herbert Simons. Simon, along with his students, explored the idea of scientific creativity as problem solving, a huge search space of ideas, formerly described as computer programs. Fernand, being one of his students, perceived the idea of GEMS and furthers this idea along these lines of inquiry. So one of the objectives of GEMS is to develop techniques for generating models and finding patterns in these generated models. The idea is to recreate many well-known psychological experiments for which the theories are known. Some of the experiments are already being conducted to validate the idea. The eventual goal is to find good models from data in those areas for which the human knowledge is still limited. They may include both human and animal behavior. Another goal is to identify and map the cognitive functions to different structural areas of the brain. Now I present you the architecture of the GEMS. So this is the overall architecture of GEMS. You can see GP algorithm lying in the center of this architecture. Its role is to create a population of models when provided with data, problem-specific operators, and seed models. Our focus in this presentation will be on the GP algorithms. Why genetic programming? Question that comes to mind at this stage is why we are using GP as a kind of model generation engine for GEMS. There are various reasons. The most important is the demand from psychology, medical, and other sciences to produce white box interpretable models rather than the black box ones. So transparency is one of the main reasons. Most of these psychological experiments deal with high dimensional search space. So a technique that can address high dimensionality was required. Last but not least is the requirement of producing multiple solutions rather than a single solution. These solutions can be further explored to find the commonalities, patterns, and develop better understanding of what's happening. All of you are familiar with the problem of bloat in GP. We think of it as a constraining factor which is limiting the performance of GP by occupying extra computational resources, making models so big that they are almost impossible to interpret. Bloat also leads to the limited exploration of search space, thus limiting the chances of finding good quality solutions. Since GP community was well aware of this phenomena from the very early days, there are many solutions to control bloat. First one is to define size limit for individuals. No one can grow beyond a certain fixed point. Another approach is to penalize the big individuals by making program size a part of fitness function and taxing big individuals by assigning poor fitness to them. An altogether different approach is to put constraints on population, that is by creating bins of different sizes, thus maintaining an overall distribution. Last one is the simplification, and we will be focusing on it in this presentation. But rather than looking at it as just another bloat control technique, we tend to think of it as a way towards better interpretability. So what is the phenomenon of simplification? So the idea is to reduce the size of the individuals by directly editing them and generating and converting them into smaller ones. This can be done by removing dormant code, which is actually unreachable code, redundant code, multiple copies of the same code, and the area of code whose contribution is not significant. So along these lines, we can classify existing simplification approaches. First one is the most simplest one, just remove the unreachable code. Second one is defining algebraic rules to simplify expressions. This means replace complex expressions with simpler ones. Numerical simplification calculates the contribution of a node towards its parent. Let's assume a node has 3 child nodes, and one of them is not making a much contribution in the output of the parent. So this node can be easily removed, and just imagine a very big tree hosted at this non-contributing child node. So you just get rid of a big chunk that was present just to make life more complex. We already discussed the last one in the context of load. Rather than focusing on just one individual, the logic is to operate at the level of the population. So the first technique proposed in this paper is generation-wide simplification. While running our experiments, we observed a lot of redundancy in our models. Many of the subtrees were common in these models. So to get rid of this redundancy, we created a generation-wide technique. We split an individual into subtrees after every kth generation. We then calculate the fitness of each subtree. We then calculate the hash value of each subtree and save it. The idea is to store just one copy of a subtree in case of multiple copies. And we repeat this whole process for all the individuals. So if the total number of individuals generated in this way are greater than the population size, we remove the ones with the lower fitness values. Otherwise, we generate extra using the routine process of crossover and mutation. So it has multiple potential benefits. The first benefit of GWS is obvious, is getting rid of redundancy. At times it happens that a good subtree is a part of a bad parent tree. This happens because crossover is usually random, and during the genetic exchange can create this sort of situation. Unlocking this good genetic material is important to let it express itself in the production of new individuals. So by splitting an individual into subtrees, we can create this opportunity. The third advantage is obvious, and it is based on the logic of the second one. And all these benefits, they comes without extra computational cost. So the next approach is pruning as an operator. And we provide this as a kind of shortcut to the generation-wide simplification. Rather than focusing on the whole population, we just work with few fittest individuals and trim them. So it has this similar set of advantages as the GWS. It also gives an extra guarantee that it does not interfere with the routine GP operators, as it is defined as a standalone operator. We tried our simplification scheme on Posner's queuing task, a well-known psychology experiment. Symbolic regression was not our primary focus, but to check the validity and extendability of our approach, we ran some experiments over it as well. The Posner is a well-known psychological experiment, and it has already been theorized by the human researchers. So the objective is to observe the role of attention on rapid perceptual decision making. It works by fixating a white dot at the center of a screen. It then presents a visual cue either on the left or the right side of the white dot. An auditory stimulus is then followed either in the right ear or in the left ear. So the participant has to make a decision within 1 second by pressing either the left key or the right key. So a number of data variables can be collected, but we are interested in reaction time and number of errors. So we use these two variables and then generate models using GEM to construct theory. So the experimental setup of the Posner's task is presented on this slide. We are using Steelbed Common Lisp, and it's version 1.5.5. We run the experiment for 10 times using 100 generations with 1,000 as a population size. We apply the generation-wide simplification after every 25th generation, and we fix the pruning rate to 2%. And at the bottom of the page, you can find various operators. These operators are defined by the domain experts, and they are used to generate models of the Posner's task. So this graph plots the best individuals of the runs. On the y-axis, you can find program size, which is actually the number of nodes. And on the x-axis, we have our simplification algorithms. So for example, GWS 25 means the average sizes of the best individual of runs when GWS is applied after every 25th generation. Max means the maximum program size. Both means that we are applying both GWS and pruning as an operator. Plain means no simplification is applied, it's just vanilla GP. Now look at the height of these candlesticks. GWS and both are significantly smaller than the plain ones. What does that mean? That means the best individuals in the GWS and the both, they are of smaller size as compared to the pruning and the vanilla GP. The size of the candlestick is the reflection of the variation in the sizes of the best individuals. So this simplified programs, do they come at a cost? So in order to make sure that we plot the fitness to check the effect of simplification, you can observe that the GWS and plane are almost at the same level. The variability in plane is much greater than the GWS. Performance of pruning as an operator and both is not as good. We expected both to work better than all, but it's contrary. An important point to note, and I'll come back to it later. To get an evolutionary picture, we plotted here the average and the max program sizes of top 20 individuals of every generation. So by looking at these graphs, you can easily observe that all of them are progressing in more or less the same way. So this is the evolutionary picture of the fitness. And we can observe that plane and GWS are slightly better than the other two ones. In this graph, we plotted standard deviation to get an idea about the diversity. And as you can see, there is not a significant difference, but in terms of diversity, plane is slightly better than the other ones. So we notice in Posner tasks that our simplification algorithm reduces the sizes without compromising the fitness, especially the GWS approach. To verify it further, we implemented symbolic regression task and ran it with the similar settings, just the difference of the domain-specific operators. Here you can notice that the pruning in both are growing at a much faster rate than the other two. The other two are more or less following each other. So all of them converge very quickly and then stays the same. So there is no major difference in terms of the fitness of the best individuals. They are performing equally good. The whole population level makes the things very clear. Clearly, the red and green ones are departing from the others too. But why this behavior? We'll get back to it. So nothing significant to note in this one, just they are converging very quickly and then the performance becomes static. No change in performance. So this slide answers our why question that we asked earlier. Clearly, the pruning and both are minimizing the diversity. The real culprit is actually the pruning. It is trimming the top good ones only, and these good ones have greater chances of selection as parents. So the new individuals tend to share same genetic material, thus losing diversity. And converging towards local optima quickly. Hence, no change in fitness after first few generations. So one needs to remain very cautious while experimenting with simplification proning. So what can we conclude from these experiments? Simplification can be added as a plugin to the existing GPU infrastructure, complementing other operators. It has the potential to generate simplified models without sacrificing on the fitness. We observed often during the experiments that probability of finding good solutions smaller in size increases with the simplification. It also keeps redundancy under check. In future, we would like to explore the relationship between simplification and complexity. So for most of the researchers take size as the default measure of complexity. So there can be other possibilities like time and Kolmogorov complexity. We also like to improve the performance of simplification by making it parallel. Thanks for your patience and thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy the presentation. Bye.